KSN's Motoring 96 is brought to you by Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life, and Midas, the way it should be.
The car showroom, I suppose most of us will end up in this place at one point in our lives, whether we like it or not, and we'll talk more about that later on. But first, don't touch that dial, because we're going to begin this week's program by showing you a TV commercial.
I thought the days of women being treated differently than men were long gone.
This is the vanity mirror so you can check your makeup.
Tell me about the mileage.
It has no miles on it yet.
Okay, what about safety features?
You feel safe. It's safe.
Well, like it or not, that commercial really illustrates how many consumers view the car salesman. Now, of course, it's changing in here, and I say it's changing for the better, but you know what they say, there's still some old dogs you can't teach new tricks to. So dealers are always looking for fresh talent. Now, normally, the sales force is made up of men, but as we're about to see, that could be changing in the future, and changing in a big way.
I guess it's been that way for, before I was there, and it has remained that way. We have a very, very tough time trying to get women into a pretty well male-dominated business.
Overall, our industry is changing, and we're really welcoming them to our industry because we need their empathy, their listening skills. I think it's been proven that women are much better listeners and have a lot more empathy, has been proven in real estate sales. They're very, very successful, and that was once a male-dominated industry as well, so it's long overdue in our industry.
Because ultimately, this is what you're going to be doing in a dealership, going from the first step right to the 10th step. Every customer that you have, you go through that same rapport.
Dennis Curtis has been in the car business for most of his life. He too believes there's plenty of opportunity for women, but they need the proper training. So Dennis and his partner Jerry McDonald created a program specifically for women.
When you're running a dealership, you don't have a lot of time or money or resources for training, and essentially there's no women have been in the business over the years. There's been no training programs for them, and you may give an opportunity for a woman to work in a showroom, but in a lot of cases where you have a large dealership where there's 10 or 12 salesmen, it's very difficult for one woman to survive in that sort of climate.
The program has proven popular. This class, being held at Humber College in Toronto, is full, and a second program has already been organized. The 8-week course includes 4 weeks of classroom and 4 weeks of job experience in a local dealership.
And we've run the course twice already, once in North Bay and once in Kingston. And the course in North Bay, we had close to 60% of the women found full-time employment after the placement. And in Kingston it was 55%. Now here in Toronto we're hoping to have 80% of the women who go through the course actually be offered full-time employ.
Okay, it's a battery, it's a maintenance-free battery, and what's important in this is it's got an eye, and when it shows a green light, it means the battery is in good condition. Okay. And when it shows a red light, it means the battery needs charging. Okay. Yeah.
Women are buying cars, but can they sell them?
In my opinion, personally, and a lot of other people that I talk to in the business, the answer to that is a strong yes. Women have an ability, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion, to be able to listen to customers a lot better than men can. There are a lot of very strong salesmen around, please don't get me wrong, but women are born with this empathy factor, this ability to nurture. And most people today who buy an automobile or buy anything are looking for a salesperson who will listen to their needs, not during the sale, but after the sale as well.
I'd like to introduce you to the 1995 Chevy Cavalier.
Oh, that's a nice car.
Isn't that a beautiful car? Let's look at the finish on it. Just below the windows down, it's built of two-sided galvanized steel, so it won't rust out. It has a property, so if you scratch it or chip it, it'll heal itself. You don't get rust. Is that a nice feature?
Oh, that's wonderful.
Well, I was in accounts receivables before I joined the course, and I felt that I wanted an exciting career change. The main reason why I wanted to get into this course is to have the earning potential of a man, because with being a woman, I find that our earning potential is limited, and this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to get into automobile sales.
I think because it's primarily has been a male-dominated industry for so many years that I'm not saying it's going to be easy. In fact, with the ladies yesterday that I talked to, I told them that it's not going to be easy. In fact, you know, they're going to wonder what they're doing in this business from time to time, but then we've all felt that way in whatever we've done. So I think if they've given the opportunity and if they've got the will to make it, they'll make it.
Not only did I buy a Saturn, I thought it might be fun to sell them. You know what I like best about working here? Showing guys the vanity mirror.
The subject of this edition of Test Drive is Audi's newest rocket ship. This is the all-new S6, the replacement vehicle for the old S4.
The S6 is powered by a 2.2-litre 20-valve inline-5 derived from Audi's very successful racing program. The numbers certainly tell a story because with 227 stampeding horses and 258 pounds-feet of torque, the S6 zips through the 100k mark in less than 6.5 seconds. The credit for the quickness is down to some sound engineering, with the turbocharger being the secret to the performance. All the available torque is produced at a low 1950 RPM and maintains that level through 4000. Now instead of the usual torque peak, you have a torque plateau. The turbo itself is smaller and lighter than before, meaning it can spool up to speed quickly, which cuts down the lag time. All S6s come with one transmission only, and that is a 5-speed manual. The shifts are short and precise, and the clutch action smooth and progressive. The only fly in the ointment, at least from my perspective, are the gear ratios. First gear is very low, so no sooner are you into it before you're out, especially if you goose it. The result is that you must be into second and just into third before you hit the 100k mark. The reason for the overly low ratios is to mark the usual turbo lag from a standing start. Personally, I could live with a higher gear and the resulting lag.
The all-wheel drive system used on this S6 is about the best the world has to offer. First of all, it makes a great deal of sense on any performance vehicle, but when old man winter bites, this thing will pull away even if only one wheel has got traction. First of all, the center diff is locked using a torsion or torque sensing differential, and there's a button down here that the driver hits to lock the rear diff.
The suspension features gas pressurized struts and coil springs at all four corners and a stabilizer bar up front. The settings are as one might expect on the torque side, but that is not to say they are uncomfortable. Far from it. The whole system soaks up everything from expansion joints to large hollows in stride, and it does so without sacrificing the handling characteristics. In this department, the S6 shows its true colours. Mind you, it's got a lot going for it. To start with, the weight distribution is balanced, the rack and pinion steering positive with great on-centre feel, and the massive 225/50 ZR16 tyres all pitch in. The latter are a vast improvement over the previous cars. This time around, the car does not resemble a ballet dancer with hobnail boots on. Rather, it has the appropriate attire. Both understeer and body roll are controlled, even as you near the limit. Stopping power is supplied by a four-wheel disc brake setup that comes complete with the latest ABS 5 anti-lock system. The stopping distance is impressed at just 110 feet from 80k. Bonus points for the ABS and the pedal feel. The driver can find and maintain the threshold point with ease, and yet should the ABS be needed, it intervenes in a discreet manner.
You know, it never ceases to amaze me. Audi have yet to learn to wire the radio through the ignition switch, meaning you can leave the radio on quite by accident all overnight. Now, in an attempt to hide this oversight, they've wired in this very aggravating buzzer. If they can wire in the buzzer, why can't they wire the radio through the ignition switch and solve the problem once and for all?
Inside, the S6 comes fully decked out. Power items range from the 8-way driver's seat with 4-position memory through the sunroof to the locks, windows and mirrors. The instrumentation is analog, but alas, there is no turbo boost gauge. Shame on you, Audi. The climate controls, while sitting in the right position, are awkward to reach and take some getting used to. The rear environment is roomy and comfortable, offering ample head and legroom. The trunk is reasonably spacious, is cut to bumper level, but lacks a split folding rear seat. Again, shame on you, Audi. From a driver's perspective, the S6 gets praise for the power headlight washers and the fuse location, but a dart for the view through the rear view mirror. Far too much headrest. On the safety front, the S6 has the lot, including ABS, dual airbags, seatbelt tensioners, plus it meets the incoming side impact regulations.
Well, that's it for this edition of Test Drive. You know, the S6 has got an awful lot going for it, especially the all-wheel drive system. It's second to none in the world, and just what the doctor ordered for Old Man Winter.
This week I want to talk a little bit about fuel pumps. Now, if your car happens to be an older vehicle that has a carburetor on it, you've typically got a mechanical fuel pump on those vehicles located under the hood, driven mechanically off the engine. They develop 4 to 7 or 8 psi as a rule. They're pretty inexpensive to replace. In some cases you have to remove accessories to get at them. But if you've got a newer car, which is just about anything built since the mid-80s that has fuel injection, you're going to have an electric fuel pump. 95% of those are located inside the fuel tank. Now, this one that we have here today is off a 1985 Chrysler vehicle, and the pump is located, as I said, inside the fuel tank. You have to be careful taking these out and guide them out so you don't damage them. And there it comes. There's what it looks like. This is what we call the pump and sending unit assembly. Starting out at the bottom here with the strainer. This pre-filters the gas that's going to enter the fuel pump. That's the actual electric fuel pump right there. There's the 2 electrical terminals, the power wire and ground wire, and it's secured on there, in this case with a little hose clamp. Over here you can see the float for the fuel tank sending unit. This is what drives the gauge on the dash of your car. There's a little rheostat in here. This float goes up and down with the fuel level to make that gauge read properly on the dash. You can see the output line with the hose clamp securing it here, and a couple of return lines back into the tank here. There's the O-ring that seals it, this neoprene O-ring right here, and a couple of tabs to locate it, and there's a lock ring or cam that locks this into the tank. There's the output hose and the return hose, and you can see the wiring plug over here and the pump wire located right here. And don't expect to get a whole lot of warning when your fuel pump starts to fail. In some cases you may get stumbling or stalling in hot weather in extreme cases, or you may, if you're real lucky, have a severe performance problem where you can drive the car into the shop but it won't maintain road speed properly. It just doesn't have the power and stumbles and surges. But by and large, the typical fuel pump failure in this type of pump assembly is a complete failure where you have to get the vehicle towed in. So if that's the case, call the tow truck. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 96.
When Oldsmobile debuted the Aurora for 1995, it was clear the company had taken a new direction. This was not your father's Oldsmobile. General Motors is now designing future cars based on the Aurora. In fact, GM says the concept car called the Antares represents the future of Oldsmobile.
Aurora is really the flagship of the division and the cornerstone for brand character for Olds. This car really goes a long way to solidify that strategy. We've got a whole series of cars that are well under development and really share in that same brand character. Yeah, the market is so large out there. There's so many different car companies. It's very important that we at Olds develop a very focused group of cars, you know, an identity that people will recognize quickly.
A team of designers worked on the Antares, including Jay Bernard, a design student from Windsor, Ontario.
I get excited just talking about Jay. Jay's really neat. He's a very talented designer, student at CCS here in Detroit, great school, and we're lucky enough to have him work with us last summer, for the entire summer, and I think it was neat. It was right when we really got started on this concept car. And he's very much a part of it. I could walk around the car and point out several areas that Jay Bernard had a significant part in doing. The exhaust, and that's gotten a lot of attention. It came from one of his sketches, and really some of the work on the rear, a lot of the development on the tail lamps. We had been working on this concept in the tail lamps before Jay came into the studio, but he really took the concept, the technology, and just ran with it and just made it even more exciting.
I think it was about 6-7 months ago. We were just working on paper, coming up with sketches, and I knew I was working on the show car for Oldsmobile, but it hasn't clicked until now. It feels really exciting, especially when I get to see the public's reaction to the car. It's very positive right now, and it's really a good thing because this is a strong statement for Oldsmobile. So.
It's a strong statement for you too, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's, I think, for somebody in my position, just to be able to work on a car like this, it is an incredible opportunity. Yes, I try to have some subliminal message in there showing that there is a Canadian behind all these ideas and renderings. The large rendering that you see is a theme sketch of an interior for a sport utility vehicle. Basically what I'm trying to do is just show a little more reach into the future as far as what may be in store for a GMC interior for a sport utility vehicle. Right now I'm using this as another major portfolio piece for me to help me out when I finish my schooling, and hopefully this will really boost my chances at working with one of the major automotive manufacturers.
The biggest single knock against Jaguars has always been the lack of head and legroom in the rear. Well, on this long wheelbase version, they've addressed that by adding 4.9 inches between the B pillar and the end of the door. That gives you lots of legroom. To give you the headroom, they've raised the roof line by about a ½ inch. In short, they've given this Jag the dimensions it's always cried out for.
The increased dimensions and corresponding amount of room has only added 48 pounds to the weight of the vehicle. This means that the level of performance and fuel economy remain unchanged. Power for the long wheelbase version is still supplied by Jag's wonderful 4-litre inline 6, although this year the engineers have tinkered with the engine management system to improve drivability. Elsewhere, the 96 version of the XJ series finally gets a glove box. A small item, but it does go to show that Jaguar are listening to critics and customers alike. It's now time to introduce you to our new fleet of long-term testers. First up is the Saturn SL1. Believe it or not, this is the second generation in just 5 years. Is it as good as GM would have you believe? We intend to find out over the next few months. Next we have the Ford Taurus. Since its introduction a decade ago, this car has been a perennial bestseller. The question is, should you avoid the first model year as the saying goes? Again, we intend to find out. Last and by no means least, we have the Dodge Caravan. This vehicle started this segment of the marketplace back in 1984 and continues to dominate the scene. New for this year is a fourth door. Fad or functional? That's the question. As before, we'll update all of these vehicles on a regular basis.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns the use of gasoline antifreeze. Gasoline by itself, of course, won't freeze, but moisture that can in various ways enter your car's fuel system will, of course, freeze and stop the fuel flow. It can also cause a lot of rust and corrosion problem on expensive parts of your car's fuel system. Now, how does that moisture enter the car's fuel system? There's various ways, of course. If you happen to be refueling the car on a day when it's driving snow or driving rain, it can enter right through the filler neck. Or as the car ages, rust on the fuel tank can cause pinholing and moisture can enter there. On this particular car, we found the problem to be a cracked fill grommet. That's this grommet that we've replaced right here where the fill pipe goes into the gas tank. Moisture was sneaking in past there, and you can see the telltale signs of rust. And many of today's cars have the fuel filler pipe cutting through the wheelhouse area where it receives a lot of tire and road splash. That can cause pinholing and more water infiltration. In any case, an ounce of prevention, or in this case 150 milliliters at a time, can save you a lot of headaches. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Women are designing cars, they're racing cars, and they're certainly buying cars. But can a woman sell me a car? Coming up on Kenzie's Corner.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
As we heard earlier, women are involved in the purchase of somewhere between 40 and 80% of all new cars and trucks sold in this country. That depends on the category of vehicle and on whose numbers you believe. But one thing for sure, the gender demographics of the buying population are completely different than the gender demographics of the selling population. Women are still a rare sight as new car sales reps in this country. The numbers do indicate, too, that there's a tremendous upside potential for women to get involved in this side of the business. Now, all generalizations are bad, including this one. But generally speaking, women customers would rather deal with a woman sales representative because, frankly, a lot of them are afraid of getting bamboozled by some high-pressure salesman. What about male customers? Well, a lot of them don't mind talking to women. They do it in bars all the time. And some of them might be concerned that the woman might not know very much about the product. But I know an awful lot of men sales reps who don't know anything about the product either, so that shouldn't be a problem. Now, the basics of sales are relatively simple. Know your product, get to know your customer, match the needs of the customer to what you got to sell, and most important, don't be afraid to ask for the business. Now, schools like this can teach those fundamentals, but it's still up to the sales rep to go out there and do the job. Frankly, a lot of them aren't very good at it. A lot of young guys get into the program, they buy the hair gel, they buy the red vest and the white shoes and the white belt. Just kidding, guys. And they maybe sell their dad a car and their best friend a car, but then they run up against a wall. They can't really develop a sustainable clientele. So they jump from sales room to sales room, don't develop any continuity. Now, women, if you want to get involved in this thing, take a bit of advice from my dad. He used to say, if you can sell, you're wasting your time doing anything else. It's a tough job, long hours, you're going to be away from your family a lot, but there's money to be made. So women, if you've got what it takes, go for it. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, graduating ceremonies are underway for our budding saleswomen, and husbands, boyfriends, and even some grandchildren showed up to lend their support. As for me, well, I'm in the school cafeteria, where I think I spent half my life during my school days, much to the chagrin of my parents. Anyway, this story isn't over yet, because we're going to catch up to some of the ladies in the car showrooms, and we'll find out if selling cars is everything they thought it would be. So stay tuned, that'll be on a future show as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
One of the things yet that we're considering or certainly developing right now are measuring internal damage, such as liver damage, kidney damage. We have not yet sophisticated our dummies to that point. These dummy occupants, of course, have advanced to the point of sophistication where we can replicate a great deal of human tolerances during frontal and side impacts.
TSN's Motoring 96 has been brought to you by Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer engine life, and Midas, the way it should be.